The concept of crime is often tied to a specific motive. Exceptions might include acts committed by individuals with mental health issues, those under the influence of alcohol or controlled substances, or incidents occurring in moments of extreme emotional disturbance. However, even though the term motiveless crime exists, criminologists argue that most of these cases involve hidden motives that remain undiscovered. The disappearance of college student Emily Murray in 2000 shook the entire state of Ohio. Weeks later, Emily was found dead, and the person responsible for her tragic end had been hiding in plain sight, assisting law enforcement with the investigation and even offering tips to implicate others. When authorities finally arrested him, they faced a perplexing challenge. There seemed to be no discernible motive. Various theories were proposed to explain what drove him to commit such an act, but none were substantiated. To make matters more baffling, the suspect appeared to have a fondness for Emily and even seemed to protect her. But at some point something shifted, turning him into a predator. Despite nearly a quarter of a century passing since the incident, the perpetrator has never revealed why he took the life of a defenseless young woman. Who was Emily Murray? Emily Miranda Murray was born on February 19th, 1980, in the small town of Sleepy Hollow, Westchester County, New York. She was the youngest of 4 siblings in a well-off family. Emily grew up alongside her 2 older brothers and 1 sister, maintaining a close bond with them throughout her life. When Emily was 2, her family relocated to Ohio, settling in Shaker Heights, Cuyahoga County. Her father had been offered a prestigious position at a scientific university and soon became the head of one of its departments. Her mother dedicated herself to raising the children and creating a warm home environment, as the family's financial security allowed them to live comfortably. The Murray children excelled academically, graduating from high school with honours and going on to attend top-tier universities. Emily, in particular, was passionate about biology and medicine, envisioning a future in the field. She was recognised as a gifted student and often ranked at the top of her class. Remarkably, Emily also managed to hold part-time jobs while donating her earnings to charitable causes. Emily's upbringing was deeply influenced by her parents' devout Christian faith. The family attended church regularly, and Emily followed their example, always eager to help those in need with both words and actions. After graduating high school, she dedicated a year to travelling the world with various humanitarian organisations. This journey took her to New Zealand, Australia, Japan, and several European countries. In 1998, Emily Murray began her studies at Kenyon College in Gambia, Ohio, moving into the campus dorms. Those who knew her described her as someone brimming with life and energy, spreading positivity to everyone around her. Emily was kind, empathetic, approachable, and incredibly driven. At the same time, she had a sensitive side, often showing vulnerability and moments of melancholy. She kept a personal journal where she recorded her innermost thoughts, dreams, and fears. Missing after a night shift. By 2000, Emily had advanced to her junior year in college. Alongside her demanding academic schedule, she remained deeply involved in church-based charitable work and took on evening shifts as a waitress at a local restaurant. Her workload was immense, yet she seemed to handle it all with grace. She even found time to enjoy her personal life, attending social gatherings that she cherished. However, it would soon become clear that not everything in her life was as seamless as it appeared. On the morning of Tuesday, November 3rd, 2000, Emily's 2 dorm roommates woke up to find her bed empty. They were puzzled. Emily was always considerate and let them know if she planned to stay elsewhere overnight. Her restaurant shift had been scheduled to end at 2 a.m, so they assumed she might have stayed late at work or gone straight to class. But when they noticed that her textbooks and notes were still on her shelf, things began to feel unusual. The roommates went about their morning, heading to their lectures while asking friends if anyone had seen Emily. It turned out no one had seen her since the previous day, and she hadn't shown up for any of her classes. While her absence was unsettling, her friends initially tried to rationalise the situation, hoping there was a reasonable explanation. That evening, a party was planned to celebrate a close friend's 20th birthday, an event Emily had been looking forward to for weeks. She had carefully chosen a gift and had even helped organise a surprise for the birthday celebrant. Missing the party was unthinkable for Emily, yet when she didn't show up, her friends grew increasingly alarmed. Desperate for answers, they reached out to Emily's family, thinking she might have returned home due to an emergency. Her parents were shocked and distraught upon hearing she had vanished. That same night, they drove to Gambia to join the search, determined to find out what had happened to their daughter. By morning, the Murrays, along with their older children, had arrived at the campus, frantically trying to figure out what could have happened to their youngest daughter. By that time, word of Emily's disappearance had spread throughout the college community. Multiple groups of volunteers, friends, and classmates were searching for her, but there were no signs. She seemed to have vanished without a trace. It was soon discovered that Emily's car, a dark green Subaru Outback, gifted by her father for her 20th birthday, was also missing. The Murrays' first move was to contact campus security, reporting that one of the students was missing and requesting help organising a search effort. However, their concerns were met with indifference. Security staff dismissed their worries, suggesting that Emily was likely spending time alone with a boyfriend and would return soon. Despite the family's insistence that Emily would never leave without notifying someone, they were advised to wait a little longer. More than 24 hours had passed since Emily had last been seen, and her family was growing increasingly desperate. Realising campus security would be of no help, they filed a missing person report with the local police. To their shock, law enforcement initially seemed to downplay the situation as well, speculating that Emily might have gone off on her own or decided to take an unannounced break. After all, they reasoned, she was a 20-year-old college student who didn't need to account for her every move. Still, the police eventually agreed to inspect Emily's dorm room. That's when they discovered she had left behind her ID, bank cards, and personal belongings. She had been last seen wearing her work uniform from her restaurant shift, which suggested she hadn't changed clothes since leaving her job. This raised serious doubts about the idea that she had gone off to spend time with a boyfriend or taken an impromptu break. It seemed highly unlikely that Emily would leave without money or essential items. Her last day at work. Emily was officially declared a missing person on the second day after her disappearance. By then, her family, friends, and concerned members of the community were already conducting their own searches, distributing flyers with her photo around town and combing the surrounding areas. The investigation began at the restaurant where Emily had last been seen. Located just across the street from the campus, the restaurant, called the Pirates Cove, was a popular hangout for students thanks to its convenient location and affordable menu. It quickly came to light that Emily's shift that night was her last. She had quit her job that evening. Overwhelmed by her rigorous schedule, she had decided to cut back on her responsibilities. Between her demanding coursework, volunteer work at the church, and part-time evening shifts, she had been struggling to manage everything. Her packed schedule had also taken a toll on her personal life. Just a month earlier, she had ended her relationship with her boyfriend, Adam, because they rarely had time to see each other. That evening, many of Emily's friends stopped by the Pirates Cove to support her on her last day at work. However, no one stayed too late since they had classes the next morning. Her shift officially ended at 2 a.m, but Emily stayed an additional 30 minutes to finish up some tasks. This meant her co-workers were the last to see her, and it was their accounts that the police would rely on to piece together the night's events. Emily wasn't alone during those final moments at the restaurant. Her friend Olivia, who also worked as a waitress, and a bartender named David Cale, were there with her, helping to close up. Together they cleaned up the dining area and finished around 2:45 a.m. Shortly afterward, everyone began heading home. This was corroborated by Gregory McKnight, a 24-year-old cook, who was the last to leave and locked up the restaurant at 3:15 a.m. None of her co-workers noticed anything unusual. Emily behaved like her normal self, kind, cheerful, and polite. She didn't mention any plans for the rest of the night and told them she was simply heading back to her dorm to get some sleep before her morning classes. A troubled spirit beneath the smile. When investigators searched Emily's dorm room, they found her personal journal, which contained troubling entries. Despite her upbeat and friendly demeanour, Emily had been battling a prolonged period of depression, something she had kept private and tried to manage on her own. Known for being sensitive and empathetic, Emily often internalized the pain and suffering of others, a quality that made her deeply compassionate, but also emotionally vulnerable. Through her charitable work, Emily was regularly exposed to the harsh realities of life, including stories of injustice and cruelty. She poured her energy into helping those in need, but it frustrated her to feel powerless against the larger forces of the world. In her journal, she wrote about how overwhelming these emotions could be and how difficult it was for her to cope with the weight of her empathy. While the journal contained no direct references to plans of self-harm or taking drastic measures, detectives could not entirely rule out the possibility that Emily might have decided to step away from her life. This theory deeply upset Emily's family and close friends. They strongly refuted the idea, insisting that Emily's faith was a central part of her life and that she would never consider such an act. She was a deeply religious person, and her belief system regarded such actions as an unforgivable sin. Furthermore, Emily had ambitious plans for her future, which she had outlined in her journal. In one entry, she sketched a picture of her dream life: a large home, herself, her future husband, their 5 children, and a dozen dogs. She aspired to build a life centered around love, family, and community, a goal that seemed to motivate her every day. Since Emily had disappeared along with her car, investigators initially considered the possibility of her running away. They theorized that, in light of her struggles with depression, she might have decided to leave town to reflect on her life. Her recent breakup with her boyfriend and resignation from her job could have exacerbated her emotional challenges, making this a plausible explanation for her disappearance. The first suspect. The first person investigators turned their attention to was Emily's ex-boyfriend, Adam, a logical starting point in cases like this. Their relationship had lasted about 1.5 years, but had been tumultuous, with multiple breakups and reconciliations. This time, however, Emily had decided to end things for good and had made it clear to Adam during what appeared to be a calm and amicable conversation. They agreed to remain friends, but investigators couldn't help but wonder, what if Adam hadn't been able to let her go? Adam willingly came to the police station when contacted. He appeared genuinely distressed and seemed to deeply care about Emily's well-being. He explained that on the night of Emily's disappearance, he and his roommate had stopped by the Pirates Cove but left around midnight. They returned to their dorm, where other students confirmed seeing them. Adam and his roommate reportedly stayed in for the rest of the night, a claim corroborated by 2 other dorm mates. With a solid alibi and no evidence to suggest involvement, Adam was quickly ruled out as a suspect. A workplace romance. Investigators then turned their focus to Emily's co-workers. During their inquiries, a cook at the Pirates Cove shared a surprising piece of information. The bartender David Cale was said to have had romantic feelings for Emily, which she had not reciprocated. On the night of Emily's disappearance, Cale and Emily worked the same shift, stayed late to close up, and left the restaurant just 10 minutes apart. Could Cale have waited for her outside and done something to harm her after she rejected him? David was brought in for a second round of questioning. He admitted that he had once asked Emily out, but after she turned him down, he had never pursued the topic again. He maintained that they had a friendly, professional relationship, and nothing more. Furthermore, David provided what detectives deemed a rock-solid alibi. After his shift, his father picked him up from the restaurant, and they immediately drove to another state to attend his sister's wedding. The alibi was verified, leaving investigators with no evidence to link him to Emily's disappearance. Once the bartender was ruled out as a suspect, detectives received a new lead from the same cook, Greg McKnight. He hinted that another cook, Dave Yoakum, also had an unusual interest in Emily. Dave was known to struggle with interactions with women. He was awkward, rude, and prone to losing his temper when rejected. Other waitresses confirmed this behaviour, sharing that Dave had made clumsy advances toward them as well. When his attempts were rebuffed, He often responded with sharp remarks and displayed a generally disrespectful attitude. Furthermore, just 4 days after Emily's disappearance, Joachim was fired from the restaurant following a heated argument, which investigators found highly suspicious. On the night Emily vanished, Joachim was off work and had not been seen at the restaurant. However, detectives needed to interview him and verify his whereabouts. When questioned, Dave expressed genuine surprise at being considered a suspect in the case. He provided a solid alibi, explaining that he had attended a concert by a well-known rock band in a nearby city that night, accompanied by friends who confirmed his story. A dead end. With every suspect cleared and no new evidence emerging, the investigation ground to a halt. Emily's family and friends held on to hope, praying she would return home safely. However, experienced detectives feared the worst, suspecting she was no longer alive. An unexpected twist. Let's rewind to about a month before Emily's disappearance, to an event that initially seemed unrelated to her case. On October 1st, 2000, a minor car accident occurred on the outskirts of Harrison, a small town in Vinton County, Ohio. A man named Ronaldo Hopkins was driving home when an old Buick swerved into his lane, causing a collision. Hopkins got out of his car to assess the damage and noticed a firearm inside the other vehicle's trunk, which had popped open from the impact. Alarmed, he immediately called the police to report the incident. Although the other driver was fined for the accident and the gun was confiscated, authorities allowed him to leave. More than 2 months later, on December 9th, 2000, that same driver was charged with involvement in a theft. According to the case documents, he resided in a remote trailer park, so 2 officers were dispatched to deliver a court summons requiring his appearance for questioning. When officers arrived at the trailer, they found it in an isolated area, far removed from the other residences in the park. The property appeared abandoned, with 2 rusted, damaged vehicles parked out front that seemed unlikely to ever run again. However, behind the trailer, the officers discovered something that didn't match the scene: a dark green Subaru Outback. After running the vehicle's plates through their database, they confirmed it was Emily Murray's car, listed as missing along with its owner. Information about the discovery of Emily's car was immediately relayed to the Gambia division investigating her case, along with the name of the person living at the property where the vehicle was found. That individual was Gregory McKnight, the same cook from the restaurant where Emily had worked. McKnight had previously attempted to shift suspicion onto his co-workers, managing to avoid close scrutiny himself. A search warrant for McKnight's trailer was secured in record time, and a police team was dispatched to the location. The door lock was broken, and 2 officers entered to begin their search. Almost immediately, they were overwhelmed by the sickening smell of decomposition. Following the odour to the back of the trailer, they found its source: a young woman's body wrapped in a carpet. From the start, there was little doubt that the remains belonged to Emily, and forensic testing soon confirmed it. The cause of death was a gunshot wound to the head. The bullet had been fired at close range, with the weapon pressed against the right side of her skull. Spent shell casings and a significant amount of blood were found at the scene, indicating that the crime had been committed inside the trailer. Detectives now turned their attention to arresting and questioning their primary suspect, McKnight, in custody. Gregory McKnight was taken into custody later that day, initially on charges unrelated to Emily's death, specifically his alleged involvement in an armed robbery. However, when he was informed about the discovery in his trailer, he went silent, refusing to answer questions and immediately requesting a lawyer. While there was no direct evidence linking him to Emily's death at that moment, police held him in custody pending further investigation. The body in the well. Neighbours at the trailer park told investigators they had not seen or heard anything unusual. This wasn't surprising given that McKnight's trailer was located far from the other homes. The property itself was in a state of disrepair, littered with trash and surrounded by rusted, dilapidated vehicles. Detectives conducted a thorough search of the area, hoping to uncover additional evidence. It didn't take long for them to stumble upon a small, overgrown well, hidden under a sheet of metal weighed down by a fallen tree. The well was drained, and at the bottom, investigators discovered a human skeleton, which appeared to belong to a male. Nearby, several additional bone fragments were found scattered across the property. Forensic analysis confirmed that all the remains belonged to a single individual whose identity was still unknown. However, police soon connected the discovery to a missing person case from 6 months earlier. A 20-year-old student named Glenn Julius, a friend of McKnight, had vanished without a trace. Glenn's girlfriend had reported that the last time she saw him, he had been planning to attend a party with McKnight. When the search for Glenn Julius began, Gregory McKnight quickly became the primary suspect. However, McKnight claimed that he and Glenn had an argument at the gathering, and Glenn left with some new acquaintances in his car. After that, no one saw him again. Investigators found no evidence to support McKnight's story, but they also lacked concrete proof to implicate him in the disappearance, so he was released. Glenn's girlfriend later identified fragments of his clothing and belt recovered from the well. His family provided dental records, which confirmed that the remains belonged to Glenn. Additionally, several of his personal items were discovered inside McKnight's trailer. Further investigation revealed that McKnight had illegally sold Glenn's car shortly after his disappearance. The vehicle was sold to associates who were also implicated in an armed robbery case. The car had been hastily repainted and its license plates replaced with fake ones. After one of McKnight's accomplices was arrested, authorities located the car. In the trunk, they found significant traces of cleaned-up blood that, upon forensic testing, were confirmed to belong to Glenn. This suggested that Glenn, either wounded or already deceased, had been transported in the trunk. Glenn's body had been partially dismembered, and the work had been done crudely, likely using makeshift tools. Deep scratches on the bones resembled marks left by a saw. Inside McKnight's trailer, investigators found a shovel, an axe, and several other tools, all of which were taken for forensic examination. It was conclusively determined that the axe had been used during the dismemberment, though other tools left unidentifiable marks. Who was Gregory McKnight? Gregory McKnight was born on November 12, 1976, in an underprivileged suburb of Columbus, Ohio. He grew up without a father in a large, struggling family where everyone had to fend for themselves. McKnight started stealing as a young boy, first catching the attention of law enforcement at age 14. By the time he was 15, he had committed his first fatal crime during a botched robbery. Because McKnight had accomplices who were older, the jury showed leniency towards him, and he received a relatively light sentence. He was sentenced to just 6 years and was sent to a juvenile detention facility. In 1997, he was released and soon married a woman named Catherine, who later gave birth to 2 children. The couple lived with Catherine's parents for a while until McKnight saved enough money to buy his trailer. However, the move to their new residence never happened. In May 2000, Gregory McKnight committed the crime of killing Glenn Julius, hiding his remains in the well behind his trailer. Then, in November of that same year, he kidnapped and killed Emily Murray, leaving her body to decompose inside the trailer. Catherine's suspicion. During questioning, McKnight's wife, Catherine, admitted that she had grown suspicious about the trailer. Her husband frequently went there alone and refused to let her visit, or even approach the property. She assumed he was using the space to meet lovers or to harbour his criminal associates, who might have been hiding from the law. She had considered many possibilities, but the idea that he was storing human remains there never crossed her mind. Trial and sentence. Although the evidence against McKnight was extensive, most of it was circumstantial. Authorities were unable to determine exactly how and where Julius had been killed. As a result, the prosecution could not seek the death penalty for that particular crime. Emily's case seemed more straightforward. Her body was found at the scene, with clear traces linking both her and McKnight to the trailer. However, the murder weapon was never recovered, and there was no apparent motive for such a cruel act. Emily had not been subjected to any form of assault, was not robbed, and even her car was abandoned behind the trailer. The question remained, why would McKnight commit such a horrific crime against the young college student? Numerous co-workers testified that McKnight had always behaved respectfully toward Emily. He was described as polite and, on one occasion, had even stepped in to protect her from an intoxicated customer who had acted inappropriately toward her. McKnight himself refused to cooperate with investigators. He denied all charges and provided no details about either crime. The prosecution argued that after Emily's restaurant shift, McKnight had lured her into a trap. He might have asked her for help, knowing she was kind and trusting, and Emily, unaware of the danger, couldn't refuse. Once inside the trailer, he may have expressed romantic feelings for her, but when she turned him down, he flew into a rage and committed the crime. The defence attempted to argue that McKnight was mentally unfit, but a psychiatric evaluation concluded that he was fully aware of his actions and could be held responsible. Switching tactics, McKnight's attorneys tried to paint Emily as a deeply depressed individual with self-destructive tendencies, claiming McKnight merely assisted her in fulfilling a supposed wish to die. This argument was met with outrage from Emily's loved ones and failed to sway the court. The verdict. In 2002, Gregory McKnight was found guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder, kidnapping, and involvement in armed robbery. He was sentenced to death by lethal injection and sent to death row to await execution. All appeals and requests for clemency were denied. In 2015, Gregory McKnight requested that his sentence be carried out, stating that he would rather die than rot in prison while waiting for execution. However, he soon changed his mind and attempted to appeal the sentence once again, but his efforts were unsuccessful. In 2020, McKnight filed a legal complaint, alleging racism and unfair treatment during his trial. He claimed that both the judge and the jury members were white and had shown bias against him, resulting in what he argued was an excessively harsh punishment. As of today, Gregory McKnight remains on death row, awaiting execution.